we go. Go again. There's no pressure, just once round. That's it. Bring it back, connect it with the back, leave it.
Sure, that's going to stay. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Okay, 2 minutes. Beth, just feel free to point at anything that I'm not doing for you in regards to these slides.
Yeah, of course, of course. Those notes on the front there, you're going to be using those. Everyone's comfortable with what they've got. Can we get those hands
You all
just
work
neat
for Crown,
in a
don't
line
you?
just for the start, guys?
Yes, you're all
just
like
for the
employed by Crown.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
1 minute 40.
It's just for my aesthetic. Thank you so much. You'll be pleased to hear it's eco water, so we are.
Yes, but not so eco-plastic tops, but we'll say nothing.
Oh yeah.
of engineering.
Yeah, of course.
Well and truly over.
Hello and welcome to Crown Colour Insight Spring Summer 2023. I want to thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I can promise you 45 minutes of inspiration, insight and everything colour. I'm so excited to introduce to you Crown's expert colour panel here, and we are going to spend the time looking at their insights into how we are all going to be decorating our homes in 2023. I cannot wait. So let's introduce our panel. First up, I've got Justyna Korczynska, who works at Crown in their creative design studio. Justyna is involved in various design projects, but also brings her creative photography to the projects. We've also got Dr. Neville Knott, lecturer and broadcaster and head of interior design at the Technological University Dublin. And also Neville is a bit of a TV presenter over in Ireland too. So from my camp, loves a bit of a makeover show. And Catherine Lloyd has an extensive experience in fashion, design, interiors and the trade sectors. She brings a wealth of corporate and personal expertise to the panel. So welcome you guys and thank you so much.
Thank you.
So first up, can I ask, maybe you, Neville,
Yeah.
Colour insights, what even is that? I'm guessing you're going to tell me it's all about the trends.
Well, we used to call it trends, but what's happened in the last year or so is that we felt that trends were something that were very sort of cyclical, that was locked into a year. I don't think it's appropriate anymore just to sort of say, well, something's in fashion when it comes to colour and interiors. There's also that somebody's going to paint the room in a particular colour and then, 12 months later we say, now you're out of fashion, you can't have that. I think colour is something that is much more evolutionary. So I think this year we're calling it insights, and we've come up with concepts that you can use, but will evolve also. So it's ideas on colour combinations. So lots of new ideas in there, and hopefully we're going to share our passion for colour and all of these ideas that we've all brought to the table from unique angles.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I come from old school press. I used to be a stylist and a journalist in magazines, and I know that's a lot of our audience here today. So there's this balancing act, isn't it, of showing people, be the consumers or our readers or our listeners, what's new, what's exciting, what's coming out, because people need fresh ideas, but also moving away from this FOMO feeling
Yes.
of not being in the cool gang
Yeah.
or, you know, feeling like we have to redecorate our homes. Because also, the other thing I'm hearing from people is that's just not sustainable either, is it? We need to be a lot more gentler on ourselves and the environment.
No, it's not sustainable. And I think one of the key things this year in particular is that we've got 3 very different looks that we're going to show you. The insights are all very different. There's nothing that's sort of saying, oh, you have to use bright colours or you have to use colours.
I'll be saying that.
You'll be saying
You know you do.
I might be saying you do, but it's okay. There's something in there for absolutely everybody. And how we go about this process is normally in June each year, we spend a month or so researching from a very specific standpoint. Each one of us have an area that we like to look into, and we come up with between 3 and 6 ideas each. So I particularly like to look at things like architecture and interior design, historical evolution of interior design. Where has it come from? Where are we now? Where could it go
And
to?
where are we going to?
Yes.
Interesting.
So we look at those aspects. Some of the other panel are looking at very specific areas that they have a real passion for.
Yeah, so Justina, where would you bring to the table?
I really like to look at innovation in materials. That's something I'm really interested in, and I really like to see all these new materials because they come with new textures, new colors, new ideas, and I'm really interested in that. So that's my field of interest, which I usually bring together with other ideas and things I've seen around.
Wow, amazing. And Catherine?
I like to look at society really. I love to look at what's going on in the world in terms of economics, politics, and try to just capture a little bit of the flavour of what's going on, capture the mood.
The mood, exactly. Well, this is what colour's about, isn't it? Like you say, there's historical reference. We love to look back for inspiration and ideas, and like you say, where we're going. Then there's a whole world of design, print, graphics, photography, materials, as you say, and then the wider zeitgeist, if you like. What do we need colour to deliver for us on like an emotional level? And I think that's really important, especially when we're talking about interior design, right? Because it's not just about putting on a jolly top and a big pair of earrings and getting out on with your day. It's what kind of really supports you, makes you feel your best.
There's loads of obviously things going on, and all those things they influence us and influence our choices and what we seek for and what we're looking for. So we all look at all those things to have a bit like a bigger picture what we're looking for and try to obviously kind of foresee what people will be looking for.
And you know, when we present them all, this is where it gets really interesting because we're all coming from different ideas of research and specific viewpoints, and we present them all around a table, and suddenly you see the synergies. Suddenly see the really strong story to emerging here and here and here. And often we get at least, because we try to come up with 6 really strong insights for the year, we get 4 or 5.
Easily, yeah. It's quite fascinating to see because we have all these fields of interest, and it's quite interesting to see we do have those synergies coming from different fields. They join into one themes.
Yes.
Oh, you've got me so excited because I know we've got 3 to present today, haven't we? I can't wait. And I've just realised as well, I've got a bit of housekeeping to do, folks. Forgot about that. Just want to make sure that everybody is got their cameras off, obviously, if you're out there, and to let you know that we're recording this live transmission. So if for any reason you drop off or you can't make it to the end, the Hillgate PR team will be sending you something to rewatch. And also, please do make use of the chat bar function. We'd love to hear your questions. There'll be an opportunity at the end for some of the panel to answer them. Anything that doesn't get answered, of course, you can forward on to the Hillgate team and we'll make sure they get answered. So without further ado, should we crack on and find out what our first colour insight is? I've got some cards here. The first trend, I use that dirty T word. The first insight we're going to look at is joy.
Yeah, this is our first colour insight we'd like to present. And joy is all about colour. It is all about impact. It is all about bold patterns. It's really exciting. It's the one that to make a statement, definitely. It is basically, in a nutshell, is a feeling of happiness and joy captured into colour and pattern. This is the way I
This
like
is
to
my
think
hymn book,
about
isn't
this.
it? Christina? I'm just like, yeah.
It's all about creating that space that will transport you to like life's happy moments, and capturing all these fleeting moments of happiness we have in our lives, and capturing that energy and using it as a theme for your interiors. It is all about kind of going into your happy memories, going into like finding your inner child, for a bit like a carefree play, forgetting the troubles and be in the moment, play and enjoy those happy moments and capturing all that energy.
I think what I'm
into a
hearing from you as well is quite like a childlike, playful feeling. And I sometimes think that when we're young, we have real kind of openness to colour. Children love colour,
Yeah,
they love wearing it,
definitely,
they
yeah.
want their bedrooms to be colourful. And then something happens to us.
Yeah,
along
life
the way.
happens.
And I think a lot of people can start becoming quite afraid of colour. So I think what's been interesting, I mean, I've seen this, I'd love to know if this is part of your insights, that I think over the last couple of years have been extraordinary and extraordinarily difficult and challenging. We spent more time inside our homes. I have understood that more people have wanted to experiment with brighter colours. And like you say, in order to feel positive.
Definitely,
is that what you're
because the colours, they do influence our moods really, and they lift our moods, and especially, and obviously there is a selection of colours that you cannot help just smile at them, and especially when you bring them all together and there's loads of them, they make us, they lift our moods, definitely. So this is what, so this is what we want to.
But I also
do.
think we were in a unique situation for a year and a half or so, where through people broadcasting from their own homes, we kept seeing everybody else's homes, and suddenly you could just see 8, 12, 30 people on screen who had these really neutral backgrounds, kind of white or pale.
Oh, you're talking about the Zoom?
Yes,
Zoom
the Zoom meetings. We were all exposed to the Zoom meetings, and suddenly everybody realised, in trying to make really
how bleak that
neutral,
looks.
it's bleak.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
actually
We
living
need
in these
colour.
sterile
Yeah, we all
environments.
felt we need some colour.
Interesting.
And I
Yeah.
think people sort of said, I'm going to do
Some
a bit
excitement,
something now. I'm
isn't
sick
it?
and tired of looking at that.
And look, and paint is probably the most affordable in terms of bang for your buck. Paint a wall or create something like this sort of paint effect we've got behind us, and you can instantly transform.
It is very easy. It's just like choosing your colours. It depends on obviously the colour instant and the mood you want to create, choosing maybe some patterns, and most of them, and especially what we present today, they are very easy to achieve, but they all have quite like strong impact, and they really can change the space.
So here's a question for you, because it's something I get asked a lot. What about if they are just beautiful, these colours, really, really lovely tones. They've all got quite a lot of warmth to them as well, and they're not play school brights. I think these are quite sophisticated tones.
Yeah, when we were thinking quite carefully about what colours to bring in Joy, what we wanted is we wanted a colour palette that will be obviously uplifting, but we also wanted the colours that will work very well together when we put them in different colour combinations. So it was quite important to find colours that will be well balanced. So we brought several colours that are a bit like bolder, and there's loads of pigment, loads of richness to them. So we've got like a lot of lovely deep green and a lovely
it's a deep green. It's not a lime green. It's not a Larry green.
No, it's
and
like
you've
a
even got,
jadey muted green.
Saddle stitch. Now that's brown.
It's as I would call it, it's a caramel tan.
Nice.
It's a lovely
Caramel
rich
tan.
color. It is really, really lovely. The richness and warmth it brings to the room is really nice. We have also this lovely, it's called Overjoy, lovely, quite happy mustard, but really, really nice. So these are the happy colors that will lift the mood. What we also brought to the color palette, a few quite like lighter shades, because obviously these are really rich tones. You need to bring some balance, otherwise it will be overpowering. So that's why we've got a few more subtle tones.
So Neville, as an interior designer, this is kind of key, right? So it's not just about identifying one colour, it's about helping people put palettes together and understanding that a pale pink looks great with a perky mustard yellow that then is grounded by more of a caramel tone. We never see colour in isolation, do we?
We never see colour in isolation. And when you're dealing with this type of stronger colour palette, you can go, as we've suggested in the visuals, with some very strong, thick stripes, which look absolutely extraordinary. Or you can just play it down a little bit by having one of the more neutral colours there. Do most of your walls in them, and then you just highlight the architrave in one area, or just have a stripe going up the architrave asymmetrically. And you know, that then with a pop of colour that you're bringing in with a chair, an accent chair, you get something that's really sophisticated looking. And you're still using the colour, but this is what the insights are all about. They're giving these combinations that allow you to be as playful as much as you want to be.
What's also important about this color palette for Joy, I call it pick and mix color palette, because that was the aim for this trend, to invite people experiment with color and put them in pairs and play with them. So all colors are in equal proportions. There is no one hero color in this color palette. They're all in equal proportions, and they're of the same, like equal importance. And also to kind of give a hint to people that maybe are not as confident making the color pairs, we put them in order to kind of suggest what could go together. So we've got the lovely green that will look amazing with this soft powdery pink.
On that note, because green and pink have had a moment, haven't they, those two colours?
Yes.
Do you see them being strong, continuing to be strong
I
pairing?
think so. It's such a good pair. I think it's still quite,
I think they're becoming a little more dusty.
Yeah, definitely.
Dusty pink.
We're basically, we going away from brights. There's still plenty of colour, but it's a bit more subdued.
And Catherine, why do you think
exactly,
that is? Because we've seen the chromatic colour palette, of which I am a fan, being really popular. This is a bit more browned off, for want of a better word. Why do you think that is?
A tiny bit more muted. I think because we're stepping away from the greys. We have been doing for some time now. We're moving into the creams, and we will, as Neville alluded to before, like the colour insights are an evolution. So we move from one thing, one key event in one decade obviously inspires the colour palette for that decade and so on. So now we're moving into this moment now where we do have the dusky pinks, we do have more of the russets, we've got that really rich ochre, and we will eventually step into a much brighter colour palette, perhaps in a year or so. We can see that coming through now, but only minimally. It will get brighter again.
Okay, but right now we just need a bit of a rest. Just. Well, on the note of grey and neutral, shall we move on to our next trend?
Our abstract simplicity.
Is abstract simplicity,
So I'm really excited about this one because I'm going to bring you right back. And right back to the moment you were born. Okay.
I don't think you know where
I don't know where I'm going with this. So apparently the psychiatrists and psychologists and everybody that knows and has researched have said that when you're born, we are exposed, and primary programming begins immediately, and we are exposed to curves, and we are exposed to everything that is curved and circular. There's really very little that's linear. So the first thing we see and connect with is our parents' eyes, the smiling mouth, the oval face. So everything is these soft curves, and that's our primary programming, and that says comfort, and it says security to us. And whereas, you know, joy and all these bright colors are a response to what's happened in the last few years with the pandemic, this abstract simplicity, in a sense, is doing something similar, but it's giving us that security. It's giving that sense of stability in our lives that we don't actually expect. And so we are looking at all of these incredible soft curves, all of these architectural forms from modernism. So how architects used the curved spiral staircase in plaster in the 1930s. We're looking at arches, and arches being used in architecture both in the past and what's coming into the future. Architects are using at the moment a lot more arches as these transitionary spaces and doing these very interesting combination of arches, one in front of the other, going back to classic architecture. And so for this palette, I'm really excited because whilst a large percentage of the population have greyed their interiors.
Oh, haven't they?
Yes, and where do we go from here? Okay, so I had a slight evolutionary moment in my own kitchen last year where the beautiful quartz top that I had chosen arrived, and it wasn't quite the tone that I had selected, but it was beautiful. And so I had a combination of a grey with cream.
So what was which was
The cream actually was on the cupboards.
Right.
The very soft
you've got a
cream.
grey stone
and
top.
suddenly the grey arrived in. It was a lot more grey than anticipated with the veins in them. And so I said, okay, dear designer, design your way out of it. And that's always a way to think about things. You know, there's no right or wrong. You just need to design your way out of it. And in fact, by changing some of the wall colours to a very soft combination of a cream and a grey,
like a
I
warm
rebalanced
grey
it.
or a cool cream? Which way?
Well, this is it. Well, in fact, so we have now, people are saying, well, how do I kind of evolve my home that I've used the grey in? And actually, the cream is the way to go about it. Cream is going to go back to be one of our strong base colours, because we haven't used that type of strong cream for maybe 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
It's been a good while, so we're going to go back. And I think in the first one, you know, we've got, you'll see in the first image, we've got this wonderful kind of low-level relief sculpture on the back wall that has been inspired by Matisse, some of his low-level relief artwork. And we've got it in East Village and Antique Cream. So we've actually combined the two in that image.
So East Village more of a grey?
Yes.
And
It's a
Antique
wa-
Cream obviously warmer.
It's
East-
like a warm neutral.
It's very
I would
warm
say.
neutral.
Yeah,
It's
very
got
warm neutral.
It's a warm
pigment-wise, that East Village has got a lot of red as an undertone in it. So it's very, very warm.
So would you say headline our neutrals are moving away from cool neutrals into warm neutrals?
Yeah,
Definitely.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're walking away from the cool greys that have been like gripping the nation
I think
for the
sometimes-
last sort of 10 years or more?
Sometimes they can be quite tricky to work with, and I think people have found that out over time. Sometimes it's quite hard to get that true grey, and a lot of greys can have that blue, very cool undertone to them. And I think this is a reaction to that, and probably as a result actually from a lot of things that are happening now in society. We're wanting that warmth, we're wanting more of the warmth to
Yeah,
come
the neutrals
through.
that gives us the comfort, isn't it? The warmth and the comfort which we definitely need now and look for. So I think that's why it comes slowly, like we're looking for warmth. And the other colour palettes, we can see it as well. There's loads of warmth around,
Yeah.
you know, the colour palettes. Yeah.
But what I like what you're saying is this is like a little tweak. This is like a baby
tweak.
step.
It's an evolution.
It's like all
Yeah.
the people in their grey homes,
Yes.
just come with us a little, we'll come a little way.
Come a little bit. And the other really interesting colour that we've included in this, and you'll see it in the second illustration, a beautiful photography that's been done to accompany this, is the fern green. I just absolutely love it. So if you've got one of the softer greys and you want to include something like this light fern is just beautiful. And it's actually got quite a lot of grey in it, but it's obviously a green.
Yeah.
So it links in perfectly.
For me, what I really like about this color palette, obviously we've got loads of these neutrals and creams, but I do like this very small hint of this desaturated brown black called leatherbound.
Delicious.
It's really lovely, and it's got warmth, but it's got depth. It's really nice, and it's really nice to use it a little bit as a kind of like a contrast and accent to all these very soft creams. I really like that little sliver of
And
this
that
contrast.
just gives it a little bit of a lift, doesn't it?
Definitely,
Interestingly,
yeah.
what you were saying though about the proportions, because this palette's very different. It's very heavy on the East Village and the lighter shades, because overall that creates a more calm, minimalist vibe, doesn't it? But what you're saying, if you want a little distinctive highlight, it's just a slither of the
All
which
this-
could be on a
It could be on a-
architrave or
Exactly. It could be just highlighting. I think the best way to approach it is to work with your space and highlight the features you've got in that space, to use it whenever that will look, you have that bit of edge. So I think that's the best way of doing it. What I like as well about this color palette is definitely, obviously it is very quiet, and I think it's like a perfect backdrop for your features in your space. Is like it sits quite quietly in a room. It's not loud, but I think it just highlights the beauty of the space and it brings the light into
I like
it.
the
And
fact
like,
it seems quite. It's a dry palette. It's what
It
we
is,
associate
yeah,
with dry
definitely,
colours.
yeah.
what do you mean by
textures.
that?
Well, dry textures can be quite warming. So a little less of your acrylics, your glass, your ceramics. but more of your woods, your wools, those kind of materials. And I think this palette works beautifully with that. So when you're talking about the curved furniture,
Yes.
it really lends itself to those kind of boucle
It's
fabrics.
like quiet elegance, I would call
Yes.
it. Quiet elegance. It's just like really, really lovely, quiet, elegant space where you can really kind of like relax and
Unwind.
Do you
Unwind,
think this
definitely,
palette
yeah.
works across any type of property? Period
Most
properties,
definitely,
new
Yeah,
and commercial
definitely.
properties as well.
Mm.
It's more of the workspace environments too. So if you've got a breakout area within a work area, I think this particular palette works exceptionally well, and including that leather bound, perhaps more as a.
But
more
I
of a
think
definite
it would
shade
work as well quite very well in the period properties, because that's the spaces when you've got the most of those architectural features that you can really work with and highlight with this color palette. So I think it is quite good.
So
as
when
well
the
for
colour's
that.
quite quiet, the shape and form starts coming
Yes,
to the fore.
exactly.
Which is
Yes.
where you
Exactly.
started with the curves and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, and also the period properties actually have quite a lot of curves going in through the plasterwork,
Yeah.
whether it's the,
So that's
the
when you can
cornicing
really
or the
work with
ceiling.
it.
So you can be much more playful with it
Yeah.
in a period property. And you were saying about highlighting using the darker tone in this, and it's what we were really inspired by was some of the more neutral interiors that have been designed by the architects. How, let's say, the inside of arches or just transitionary areas from one space into the other, just the return has been highlighted in that really strong color, and that looks incredible. You know, so you can be very playful. So it could be like the balustrade is done in a very dark color, whereas
lovely.
so you're silhouetting that against the wall that's coming
So
through
you've
the
got to
background.
really think about your space and the architecture within your space. This is less about the stuff
Yes.
and more about the
yeah.
bare bones of the
It
building.
is basically using color to bring the best of the space you've got. I think that's the way. Obviously, you always have to work with the space you've got and try to find the colors and the application of that color to bring that space out.
I'm really interested. The only sort of non-neutral I'm seeing here is this light fern, which is a touch of green.
Yes.
Do you see that? All obviously that's a really intrinsic part, but that connection to nature
Yes, I think
still been quite important.
I think the green,
Definitely.
this very soft green, and the fern, this is one of the things that's evolved. There's been lots of greens around in the last few years, but what we really wanted to get with this colour was that sense of frost on a spruce tree, you know.
It's a comfort color
It
as
is a
well.
comfort
As like,
colour.
greens, obviously, especially soft greens like this. This is a comfort color.
There's a little bit of blue in there, in that fern green as well. It's just coming through, it's really soft.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I'm seeing a lot about form as well. I mean, there's been like a huge trend for panelling during lockdown. My whole Instagram feed was full of people nailing bits of battening to the walls. So where there's a lack of colour and it starts becoming more about texture, if you don't have the beautiful Victorian cornicing and your lovely archways.
Definitely, that's the way to bring
you
a
see
bit of that
continuing
interest.
to be a trend?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's
It's
bringing
flattering.
interest. Yeah.
It is a way when you've got a soft palette like that
Yeah.
to really make the use of light, shadow and form to accentuate those details.
Definitely, yeah.
Gorgeous. You've almost got me on board, but I feel like
But the thing is as well, the paneling is evolving as well. Paneling is becoming a lot more creative. People have obviously started with, Georgian pin paneling, went on to the Victorian sunken paneling, then we had the arts and craft, very linear paneling, and so we become very playful with paneling and very at home with it. We can see why it does give a texture and a warmth to a room. But I think now we're getting into creativity with paneling, where a little bit of low relief and starting to use curves is going to become much more of a normal, I think.
Yeah, it definitely, obviously using shapes, it always brings some interest to a room because obviously those shapes and patterns, they play with light and shadow, create some shadows, and it always brings some interest to a room. Yeah.
And I think where there's a lack of colour, you need to sort of bring interest in other ways, right? Which I think brings us on really lovely to our third trend, which you're calling breathe.
We are.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
I love this mood board, by the way. I mean, that's just so visually tantalising, isn't it? All those beautiful textures.
Yeah, it is, and that's really quite a key inspiration for us, really. So when we often think of breathe, we think of light, air, ventilation, relaxation and just letting go. And this insight really works on two levels. So on one level, it's about those architectural features that let the light in, let the light fall onto a surface, create those really interesting patterns and textures that you can see, and begin to really play with colour. But on another level, on a more subconscious level really, it's just remembering to take time out to breathe and just be. So Anna Heringer is an architect who was one of the inspirations for this particular insight, and she strongly believes that form follows love. And for her, architecture is always about being joyful. It should connect with the people who are using it, and she focuses on natural building materials. And so she uses really high-tech, innovative design, but she uses materials that are used by local trades. So like your mud, your clay, your straw. And then by using materials that are local to that particular area, she's creating buildings that can be repaired quite easily and which are ultimately sustainable too. So, and the B&B house, that was another inspiration for us with this one, because that uses cut-out blocks and cut-out fretwork on a really long wall within that building to create this walkway that just plays with the light and the form. So of course colour's never static. It always changes dependent on time of day, where you are in the world, and we just love this about this particular
especially about
insight.
in this colour inside. I think that the changing space, because obviously whenever you've got screens and fretwork, that plays with light and lights the light and shadow, and that plays with colour, and it changes that colour through the day as the light changes. Obviously the temperature of the light changes as from the morning to midday to evening, and it moves obviously around, so you have this ever-changing shadows, and it changes the colours you've got in the room, and I really like that aspect.
That's what we really wanted to communicate really with this particular insight. So it's about playing with the area there, seeing how you can use construction materials to weave their way into the core fabric of a building to change what our perceptions are. Normally we know of solid walls, we're always surrounded by solid walls, but it's about using that space.
Opens the space, isn't it? Opens the space, it brings the air in, and it makes the space more airy, and you've got the light and the air in.
But it does, but I think but importantly, I think, you know, we're evolving a little bit out of open plan. And so, again, I think the pandemic sort of realised that having this one huge space on one floor for everybody to try and live and work in wasn't a brilliant idea. But I think this type of fretwork or screening, it's something that can be added to as much as you want.
Versatile, and it can change it. It's easy to change what we need. We want to adapt our spaces to our needs throughout the day or throughout the months. We want to adapt that space.
And so it becomes broken plan, not open plan, and that's the key to this.
Something that can be easily adapted to. It's not a fixed structure.
And then the colour can come in on the screen.
Exactly, and that's like a really good idea, like a really good way to bring that colour in on those screens, and you can have the walls quite light. I think that especially on one of our images, the whole room is like light and filled with space. The colours are very light on the walls, and then you've got this fretwork panel which is just painted in, I think it was a cushion craze, really lovely terracotta colour, and it brings that colour in. But you can put a bit of the colour in the room, not on the walls. You can bring it on a screen or something. You can move it around and change your space, and I think that's quite interesting.
I think how we've pulled the colour palette together as well. So again, it's like a mixture of warm and cool tones. And like Justina mentioned before, the palette's shown in terms of hero colours and accent shades. So we've got the likes of powdered clay here, which is really like it's a muted blush, but ever so versatile. It works with a myriad of different colours. And then linen blend, which was one of our new colours. So again, it's what we said before, it's like it's a warm neutral shade. So it comes from the orange colour family, so it's got that warmth to it. And then that plays with the likes of blue glaze. Now blue glaze on the surface looks like quite a pale blue, which it is, but it's got some really lovely warm undertones to it, because of course blue can be quite tricky to work with in different spaces and dependent on the lighting.
But when you put a blue and a clay next to one another, they make each other really sing, don't they?
They do.
There's a light.
That's really nice
it's
colour
a lightness,
combination,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's perhaps something that we haven't used historically as a colour combination as much as the Mediterranean have. And you know, when we go there and we're experiencing some of their natural clay tiles, they'll often have the blue, and even the stronger blues, with the type of clay. And it's something that we love. You know?
I'm really interested in this concept of broken plan, creating what I'm feeling this trend's about is creating a feeling of space and yet also intimacy. There's quite a lot of juxtapositions going on. It's like it's open but it's closed. It's warm but it's cool. And in terms of a colour palette, I mean, I love the idea of screens and partitions, but I'm going to get down and practical. Not many people, I'm like, it's just not going to work in my house. I've got walls and they need to stay there. But I can get this feeling of this openness with this colour palette.
And in a commercial environment as well, that will work so well. So for example, within more of a residential environment, it might be something that's introduced into a lounge. We've still got hybrid working. Many people have well adopted that scenario, but you need a space that can be used in the evening as well as in the day. And I think this type of fretwork is something quite interesting that we're seeing a move into the interiors.
Definitely, we see more and more of that. And I think again, it's just that the play of light and shadow, how it changes the color you've got, either on the fretwork or behind it, with obviously shadows and patterns that.
But from an interior design point of view, I really like the idea of the large open plan kitchen, and suddenly the dining table is sitting there in what was probably originally the kitchen before the extension, which then transitions into the original living room where the wall is gone. And so you've got this large L shape that's opened up everything, and of course it looks wonderful. But if you want to visually keep that sense of space, but anchor everything into its own zone, this type of fretwork screening is a beautiful way of doing it. So I've done what I've often do. I love the power of 3. I love the idea of doing thinner screens, but I would put actually 3 across with good breaks in between of about 1200. And so 3 kind of makes it look like it's not a mistake. I haven't just stuck something onto the end of the wall. And there's that sense of openings going through into the different spaces. And it works beautifully because you can still see through it as well. So it's light, and with some clever use of lighting around it to actually highlight it, suddenly you've transformed your home for very little money.
I love that idea. Love that idea. Oh, guys, I could talk to you forever, but I got one eye on the clock, and I'm wondering if we've got some questions coming in.
Oh, good. I hope so.
A check? I'm going to have a look and see if anybody out there has been. I mean, I've just got loads of questions. So let's see if they have. Right, okay. Oh, this is a really good one. What colours would you recommend for using in smaller spaces?
I would say go bold and not bright, but rich colours, definitely in small space. I think people are...
That's kind of like counterintuitive, isn't it?
People are usually scared of using darker and bolder shades in small spaces, thinking, oh, I need to use something very light to make it look bigger. But actually the opposite works really well in small spaces. If you inject strong colours into that space, it will become more interesting. And I would encourage even using something like Joy, these big bold stripes. You can really put a bit of a color very easily with this very graphic tool of those big stripes. And also you're breaking kind of like the geometry of the room, so you kind of losing the sense of like how small it is. It becomes something different. It becomes interesting. You're forgetting about the size. You're thinking about how interesting and lovely it looks. I would definitely go bold and rich.
Well, because in the darker you go in a small space, whether it's the bathroom or a very, very small TV room or something, the darker you go, you don't get the outlines between the floor and the wall and the ceiling as such. You can really blur that. And if you're using a more monochromatic color scheme as well with furnishings, you can get a much, I think, a bigger space actually with clever use of lighting, with strip lighting, etc.
So you're going more tonal, less high contrast, but you're going quite high contrast.
I'll go pattern.
Yeah, I love it.
I would go very, very dark.
I think for me it is, I like to break kind of like the geometry of the room. If it feels too small, if you bring that pattern, you're forgetting, you don't see the shape of the room, you don't see how small it is, you'll see this pattern and color.
So it's like creating a big focal point. Draw the eye to that, rather than lots of
excitement. You just bring loads of excitement in that space, and you're forgetting anything else about that. It's just like, oh,
and then
lovely.
you're blending and blurring
Just say,
on the edges.
make it so dark you can't see. No, I'm not.
Actually, on that note, because I haven't seen a lot of that in here, this trend for the darks, those inky darks, the navies, the forest greens, are they still going to hang around in 2023?
Well, they've been around for a while now. I think we're getting much softer tones coming through now in the blues and the greens.
Yeah, I think people tend to like look for color. So I think we become as well more colorful. I think it's still obviously monochromatic interiors. They still will be popular and it's still quite appealing. But I think we're looking for more color. It's just interesting.
I think the likes of the tans, the saddle stitch, the cushion craze, they're the shades that will come through as well. So they're warmer tones, but again, they really kind of tap into your emotions. So whether that's within a commercial setting or whether that's a residential setting, they work
and so
very
all
well
colours
on
are
that
a bit
level.
more subdued, but there's plenty of colour there.
Yeah.
So there's no bright, shouting brights, not that much, but there's loads of colour.
But doesn't this go back to the whole idea of the insights? And it takes a while for people to start to use stronger colour or stronger colour combinations. And so the ink blue didn't just suddenly arrive.
No.
Yeah.
You know, we had seen it a few years before and we had brought it through, or the bottle green, and we actually did a combination of both, I seem to remember back then. But it took quite a while for that, just for people to embrace that. So it could be that this is just the beginning of using these much stronger.
Going a bit lighter.
Yeah.
I've got another nice question come through. What's the simple secret to making a colour scheme harmonious? Oh, yes, I want to know that one too.
Right. Technically. So
Yeah.
technically, on the colour wheel, you go with the colours and tones either side.
Yes.
So that's harmony. If you want
So
contrast,
you've sort of got your reds and pinks and oranges sit
yes.
together, your
Well,
blues
if you look
and
at,
greens.
let's say you can Google it, that the Munson colour wheel is a really good one to look at. And it'll have all of the monochromatic tones. So it won't just be the reds, it'll have all of the softer tones going to white as well. And when you look either side, you'll see tonally which are perfect and harmonious. Well, if you want to go for contrast, you go directly across the colour wheel.
Yes.
And that's how, that's scientifically the most simple way.
Visually more. But what about, so, because you've created quite lovely palettes here, that all these colours sit nicely together. So this is making it really easy for decorators, interior designers, or indeed the person picking up their paint from their DIY store. They know all these colours go together. Is there a general rule of like how you put different palettes together? I mean, what I'm feeling with all of these palettes is they've all got a warm undertone, haven't they?
Yes.
Which means,
With
and what you're
interjection.
saying is when your grey marble worktop turns up in your warm cream kitchen, there's a jar.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
not friends, even though
They're
there's...
not friends. So you need to, how do you make them friends?
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw out my kitchen. I don't want to throw out my new marble top.
So it's just maybe getting the undertones to sing together.
Exactly. And that's cross coordination. And so what we're doing a lot of the time here is we're cross coordinating, and we're bringing maybe unusual color combinations together that aren't necessarily beside each other on the color wheel, but that we're saying because you can use them like this and this, they're going to work. And I suppose that's what we do, isn't it?
It is a bit of a science thing, isn't it,
Yeah.
that we can geek out on. Right, next question. We've still got time. Yes.
Good.
Which shade would you recommend for a warm neutral in an open plan contemporary space? Because this is really good. Modern spaces can sometimes feel cold. So there you go. You knocked all your walls out. You put your big glassy extension on.
Yeah.
It's big. It's bright. But you're sat there at night with your box set, and you haven't got your heating on, obviously, at the moment. It's all feeling chilly.
Use a mid-tone.
A
So don't go,
mid-tone.
yeah,
Don't go too
for
pale.
No, don't go
Oh,
too pale.
interesting.
Sometimes that's quite a mistake.
Yeah.
So I think the first step that often people think about is that they think, right, if they want a neutral, they sometimes think they like colours, but you go mid-tone, especially in a big space, then it doesn't feel too cold, too clinical.
It will
You've got
feel
that
more cosy,
injection
yeah, I
of
think, yeah,
coziness and
Do
warmth.
you want to give us an example
Yeah,
from the
linen
trends?
blend is a really good example
Which
of that.
trend's that in?
So that's in Breathe.
Breathe.
Yeah.
Linen blend.
It's got what we'd know as a light reflectance value of around about 58. So anything, we say mid-tone, 50 to 60. So, and that, it just creates that lovely depth. It doesn't feel too cold, it doesn't feel clinical, but like Justina said, it injects that sense of coziness to a space that almost embraces you in a little bit.
That's really interesting as well with you, with your commercial background, because so many architects still to this day want that pure architect's white on the walls. It's all about the pure form, but that is such a stark, chilly
It
colour
can be.
It could be,
to
yeah.
live
It can
with,
be.
and especially in a larger space.
And always think of the end user too. Yes, you're completely right. So maybe in some settings, that pure brilliant white, great. But
Well, okay,
always think
that's my question. When is pure brilliant white good?
in perhaps if you've got a corridor, for example, a commercial space, and a workspace environment, you've just got a corridor, that could work quite nicely. Personally, I never use it, but I do see it often used. I always prefer to go for these kind of tones with linen blenders. That's my kind of canvas shade, really.
For me, I would use purely white. When you go for like really bold, bright colors, sometimes it is good to bring a bit of white with it, not to overpower, and for contrast, and especially I think if you have like a really modern space and you want to make it feel modern and you want to make a statement. I'm just like a big fan of like big statements and patterns and bold colors, and sometimes they work really well with white as a kind of like a contrast.
As a highlight, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Try
I think
not
that's
to use your whites. I'd always say try not to use your whites with reds too much. For some reason it
Oh,
creates
yeah,
a really
that-
jarring effect. They tend to work better
I
with
think-
more of the cooler undertones.
Yeah, I think like deep greens, like even collage, that looks really lovely with white because it's a really rich color, but it looks really lovely with white, definitely.
Can I ask you quickly about ceilings? Because they tend to always be white.
They're always forgotten, aren't
They
they?
are.
Yeah,
It's
I
always
mean,
that
if
space.
we go back to our joy trend, this is I think one key element of this color insight. We want to for people to explore the space and don't forget about the ceilings. We want to, like, especially if you're using the stripes, you can start the stripes at the wall and just carry them on the ceiling to bring that space.
With the Joy palette, with something like that, a pure brilliant white ceiling could actually kill that off.
Oh,
couldn't it?
definitely,
Just-
yeah.
It's sometimes people think no one looks at the ceiling, just do it white.
No, we
forget about
want
it,
to
but
bring
it can-
every surface,
So you've got to
especially
think
for
of the
joy.
whole-
All the surface needs to be color because it is a color trend, like for making statement and bringing the color in the space.
But I also
Definitely.
think that brilliant white worked quite well with the very cold greys that have been in. Now I think that's evolving to something else. So I like to go for an off-white. So at the moment I'm going for the classic white, which has got a little hint of warmth in it. It doesn't come across as being too creamy.
Yeah.
It's just got a little bit of powder or something in it that makes it feel soft.
Yeah.
So I like that. And if I was going to choose a wall colour, for a neutral wall colour, I like any of the stones, going back to classic architecture, any of the kind of Portland stones are a beautiful combination, whereas we're going back to classicism here, and it's never going to date.
No, I love
There you go.
that. That's never going to do it. Okay, so we're wrapping up. I want a quick fire, though, before I give us an out. Quick fire. Favourite trend?
Joy.
Oh, abstract simplicity.
No, I'm sorry, I'm actually going joy.
Color
It's
wins.
almost a full house for Joy. Oh, guys, thank you so much for giving up your valuable time today. I mean, I've been talking about colour my whole career. I never get bored of it. There's always something new and a great insight. And I'm sure, guys, there's so much to go on there. If you've got any more questions or we didn't get your question answered today, please do pop it over to the guys at Hillgate. We're all on tap to answer any of your questions after this live. Again, you'll be sent the recording if you missed any of it. And it just leaves me to thank Justinia and Neville and Catherine so much. And also to Crown, of course, for having me. Thank you very much for joining us.